How does the Checkbook IRA actually work? Hey everyone, Adam Bergman here, tax attorney and founder of IRA Financial. So if you want to use your retirement funds to invest in alternative assets, there's really two ways you can do it. The first is known as the Self-Directed IRA, and the second is known as the Checkbook IRA or the Self-Directed IRA LLC. So I'm going to go through both ways you can use retirement funds to do alternative assets, spend some time on the Self-Directed IRA, then I'm going to spend time on the Checkbook IRA, show you the differences, and explain why you would potentially want to go with the checkbook. So the first way is the traditional self-directed IRA. Since 1973, with the advent of ERISA, retirement funds were created. And in the tax code under 4975, the IRS only told you what you can't do with your retirement funds. And there's essentially only three things you can't do with your retirement funds. Can't buy life insurance in an IRA, collectibles, and you can't do what's known as self-dealing transactions, which essentially is you can't do anything with your IRA that in somehow, directly or indirectly, personally benefits you, lineal descendants, or entities you control. In other words, you got to make IRA investments that benefit your IRA exclusively. So now that you know what you can and cannot do with your IRA, let's talk about the two ways that you can use your retirement funds to make alternative asset investments. The first, the self-directed IRA, the most common way to do a retirement account investment into alternative assets like real estate. Pretty simple stuff. All you need to do is find a custodian. I suggest if you are looking for an IRA custodian, you probably want to make sure they're a member of RITA, the Retirement Industry Trust Association, which is the leading organization in the self-directed retirement world. So once you find an IRA custodian, which is essentially either a bank, financial institution, or a state chartered trust company that's authorized to custody retirement accounts, you're in business. You simply open an account. You will then roll over any IRA, 401k, 403b, 457b, any retirement funds. You'll roll over to that custodian tax-free, and then you will direct that custodian to make the alternative asset investments. Now, the one thing to remember is a retirement account custodian, say IRA Financial Trust. We are an authorized IRA custodian. We don't sell investments. We don't sell stocks. We don't sell mutual funds. We don't give investment advice. We're not fiduciaries. We simply facilitate investments. So we don't compete with the Schwabs and the Vanguards and the Bank of Americas. They make money when you buy product, mutual funds, ETF, stocks. We do not sell product. So we complement the traditional financial institutions. So if you're looking to do alternative assets, and again, as long as it's not collectibles, life insurance, or self-dealing transactions, you can do it. Real estate, hard money loans, cryptos, gold, world is your oyster. You can do it. So your first concept is, let's go self-directed. So the first is the self-directed IRA. Self-directed IRA, you open the account, you move the money in, and then you simply direct the custodian to make the investment. They do all the IRS reporting, the 5498, 1099, anything that is required from an IRS perspective, they will handle. Okay. You are in charge of the investment. That's why it's called self-directed. So of course you want to do your diligence and make sure you've done your research and you're comfortable with the investment. So once you move the money in, direct the custodian to make the investment. Title of the property is in the name of the IRA. So for example, IRA Financial Trust Company for the benefit of the Adam Bergman IRA, and all the income and gains will flow back to your IRA without tax. And that is the tax advantage of using a self-directed IRA to make investments. No tax. If it's a pre-tax retirement account, you get tax deferral. If it's a Roth, it could be tax-free so long as you're 59 and a half and the Roth's been open at least 5 years when you pull the money out. Second way to do alternative assets is the Checkbook IRA, which really since the mid-1990s has become a super popular way to do alternative asset investments, especially real estate. Real estate is probably the most popular investment for the Checkbook IRA. Why? Because with the Checkbook IRA, what is happening is a limited liability company, an LLC, is included into the structure. So remember I talked about the first way to do it, the traditional self-directed IRA, where money moves from your current custodian, let's say Bank of America, to IRA Financial. It's a direct movement of money. And then IRA Financial Trust will then make the investment into your real estate or your Bitcoin or whatever you want to engage your IRA to do. Now with the checkbook, the difference is an LLC is created. So think of it as, big triangle. An LLC is created. The money goes from Bank of America to IRA Financial Trust, then to an LLC that's wholly owned by your IRA. You manage it. The LLC operating agreement will provide all this information. All the profits or losses and distributions will go back to the owner, which is the IRA. And what the LLC does is, number one, it gives you limited liability protection. So if you are a real estate investor, limited liability protection is super important. Why? Because it protects any of your retirement assets outside of the LLC. Okay, so if you have other retirement money outside of the LLC will give you that limited liability protection. Number two, you also have more privacy, right? Remember, I mentioned with the self-directed IRA, the first way to do alternative asset investments with a retirement account, title would be in the name of the IRA, IRA Financial Trust Company, for the benefit of the Adam Bergman IRA. With the LLC, you can call it anything you want, XYZ, Sunshine LLC, Snowflakes LLC. So long as the name is available, you can do it. Where should you form the LLC? Good question, right? Generally, you're going to want to form the LLC where the real estate will be located. Why? Because that state will generally deem you to be engaged in a trade or business. So if you buy real estate in Texas, you're probably going to want to set up that LLC in Texas. Now, you may be asking, hey, Adam, I've checked YouTube, I've read a lot of blogs. A lot of people like to set up their LLCs, Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada. What's the deal? Well, not necessary. You could, but if you do set it up in Wyoming or Delaware, you're going to need to also make sure that LLC files to do business in that state. So that's something we can discuss, and that's probably something that you'll need to focus on. But if it's not real estate, you can probably set up the LLC in any state because you're likely not going to be engaged in a trade or business. If you're doing cryptos or buying gold or hard money loans or private equity or hedge funds, you can generally use any state LLC you want. All states recognize LLCs. So again, what's the difference between the checkbook control or checkbook IRA and the self-directed IRA? The LLC. It's the only difference, right? With the self-directed IRA, money goes from the bank or financial institution to the trust company to your investment. Think of it as like a triangle, right? With the IRA checkbook, the money goes from financial institution to IRA Financial Trust, let's say, and then to an LLC. The LLC, then you have the checkbook. You have the pen and paper where you can write a check or do a wire to make the investment. Title is in the name of the LLC, not your IRA. You have limited liability protection. You can get things done quicker. You should be able to reduce your custodian fees because you're in control. So who should go checkbook? Well, I suggest if you're doing lots of transactions, specifically real estate, you want more control, you want privacy, and you're into limited liability protection because it's important for the investment you're doing, you should probably do checkbook. If you're doing one-off investments like private equity, hedge fund, one maybe loan, and it's basically, or even a plot of land, and it's really a whole type transaction or a whole type investment, you don't need the LLC. You can go with the traditional self-directed model. Okay, so there's no right or wrong. It's really your preference, how much control, privacy, and how much limited liability protection you want. Both are perfectly legal. Both are very popular, and it's just a matter of your taste. I personally have seen more real estate investors go with the checkbook IRA because they want the limited liability protection, the control, and the privacy. But again, it's all up to you. It's really just the same structure. The only difference is an LLC is stuck in the middle. And then with the LLC, you have a little bit more control to make the investment. In both cases, same tax treatment, deferral or tax-free in the case of the Roth. So if you're looking to do alternative assets like real estate with your retirement account, this video hopefully went through both of the structures. Number one, the self-directed IRA. Number two, the LLC. Gave you the advantages, what you get with both structure, who should choose each one. Again, up to you, but generally the more frequency or higher frequency of transactions, you're probably going to want to edge more to the IRA LLC. There you go. I hope this was helpful, and happy investing. Self-directed IRA is just a great way to diversify. So thanks again.